Dimp Digital presents the DDT WrestleCast.
Here from Dimp Digital. Welcome to the DDT WrestleCast. We are back once again, this time to review AEW Full Gear 2020, which took place this past Saturday here as we are recording and publishing this. I'm once again joined by the main man, Le Champion himself, Miss Paper. How's it going?
I think that's the last time we might be able to say that as well. You know, the next pay-per-view, I can't refer to myself as Le Champion anymore.
That could be it.
Could be it.
We'll see if we can squeeze maybe one more in with Le Champion to your name. Maybe we should do a celebration or like a retrospective look back at your time as Le Champion, 12 months.
The disgrace it's been.
Some people are saying that the Fantasy Gaming League Championship belt is a bit of a curse because we had Hall on a streak of winning, then the belt gets involved and he loses. You get the belt. Looks like you could blow that and lose that. And if next year Biff does indeed have it and loses it, there's a pattern emerging that the belt is too hot to handle.
That pressure, it's like a hot potato. You just can't hold it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got Full Gear, which there's actually not been that much time since the last pay-per-view. This is like this feels like it's the short part of the calendar where they have a couple of pay-per-views, not once a month, but every sort of 8 to 9 weeks, and this is one of those. How have you been getting on with AEW as a whole since we last spoke for All Out? 'Cause I think we both kind of enjoyed All Out, but felt like there was a lot of improvements that could have been made, perhaps even into the lead up of that one.
Yeah, I personally, I know what you mean. This was only, I think, 2 months. I think the lead to the next pay-per-view is something like 4 months, so there's a massive gap.
Yeah.
I personally with AEW, I just quite enjoy it. I enjoy sort of zoning out a bit on I watch it usually on a Saturday morning to watch Dynamite. I know that's a fair few days later, but I just quite enjoy zoning out, and I can just get into the stories a bit more, and it's a bit slower paced, I think, than like WWE was. So personally, I've sort of been enjoying it. The build up to this one, there's been a couple of cracking storylines that have been building, which led to this one, which is also interesting. There's a couple of questionable storylines as well that we'll also come into, I guess, as we go through this. But all in all, I'm quite happy with AEW at the moment. I'm just enjoying it. I'm taking it for what it is. It's and there's no other product out there on the wrestling market that I'm sort of willing to pick up and swap out for or supplement AEW with. So they're doing a good job.
Yeah, I flirted with trying to watch a bit of WWE again and just couldn't bear it. And then New Japan had their G1 tournament, which is I think it's like 10 events, but it's quite condensed in like a month or so, 3-4 weeks. And I watched the first sort of 3 or 4 events, and it was good, but I was like, I can't keep up with this. They weren't posting the English commentary until like 2 or 3 days after the event. So I was trying to avoid spoilers for 3 days, quickly watch it. Then by the time I got round to watching them, it was time for another event, and I was like, this is too much. But yeah, I think now I've just resigned myself to just committing to AEW and just sort of leaving it there, not trying to, because you can get burnt out on wrestling quite easily. Got to be careful not to just fill your time with toot, because you won't want to watch the new stuff. I think I sort of have a balance where I watch some of the old stuff, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, and just keep up with AEW every week and just settle for that for now.
Yeah, it's like if AEW seems to have about the right amount of time in my head I can give to wrestling, which is sort of about 2 to 3 hour period a week. They obviously have their Dynamite, which is a 2 hour show, which is just about the right amount of time for me before I start, going off on a tangent and forgetting about things, and they've got a good couple of things that are supplemental to it. So I watch Being in the Elite, BTE, and maybe like Sammy Guevara's podcast and stuff like that. A little few things that are on the side that's not really AEW, but also just interesting to watch. I don't tend to watch Dark because they're just squash matches. I know, and I'm a bit gutted that I've sort of missed out on the Brandon Cutler storyline, but the problem is that's probably a good storyline that's been supplemented with just a load of crap just to boost people's win-loss ratios, and that's what's a bit frustrating. They could definitely do a lot more with that show. I know they've tried to do a few matches, but it just still feels very an hour and a half of 2 hours of squash matches.
Yeah, it's Dark is just too long now. There's episodes that run 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and it's just like this is obviously the B show. It's quite clear this is the B show, and it's like, why is the B show running for 2.5 hours? One of them was recently, and I was like, good lord. So I had to sort of watch it in dribs and drabs throughout like a few days. Like that should be an hour max, really. But I guess they've got a lot of indie talent they're picking up. There's people like, it's been reasonably rewarding, I guess, when the people like Will Hobbs have come through, and we saw him at the what was it, the Battle Royale he was in, wasn't he? And he'd kind of come off of Dark and done a decent job. There's a couple of others on this. I kind of half enjoy watching that, but it is just lately they've been trying to put like storylines in, like you mentioned, Brandon Cutler and Peter Avalon. That's been like a fixture throughout, and they do sometimes a few interviews, but really it can't be going. I mean, 2 hours is just way too long for it to be considered.
It's good in a sense that it does help supplement the main show, so we wouldn't be able to have a lot of the Ricky Stark and the Brian Cage stuff without Dark, because they're getting all their wins on Dark, so they can come out and be like, well, we're getting all these wins. And they don't have to say it's against squash opponents, but they are getting all these wins, and that's what sort of Dark sort of helps do. Helps them, I guess, push these people that. So when they do need to use them in Dynamite, they can do. But it's just a bit tedious to watch, if I'm being honest. I don't enjoy it.
Yeah, it definitely needs a bit of a formula change. How are you finding BTE then? Because I think I initially put you onto it and you was like, well, it was entertaining, but it's not for me. And then I checked back in with you probably about a month or two later, and you was like, I love BTE. And I was like, well, I didn't expect that to happen.
At first I thought it was just a bit, a really sort of shit and gimmicky, the whole of like Colt Cabana chasing like Kenny around and stuff like that, and I thought, well, what the fuck's this? And then I think when she just accepts it, I think it's something you said, I think if you start just accepting it for what it is, it's actually all right, and there's actually little bits of story in there that help supplement everything. And I just sort of started to be more chilled with it, I guess, in my own tone, and then I actually came to quite like it. And there's every now and then you get little bits that help push the story along in some of the stuff off camera that's not going to happen on Dynamite. But equally so, like it's things like you get to sometimes see other wrestlers, and like I absolutely love the sort of the John Silver and what's his name, the long hair black
long hair,
got knocked out the other week,
Alex Reynolds
segments, like their drink the Kool-Aid stuff. I think they're brilliant, and now I look at it more as like for UK audience, like that, like a Harry Enfield and Chum sort of sketch type show type thing, and that's what it is. It's like it's a sketch show for All Elite Wrestling, and so I do enjoy that a lot.
Yep, sounds good. Well, let's move on to Full Gear, and we'll talk a little bit about the build up to each of the matches as we go through them. You didn't bother with the buy-in, did you? So I'll just quickly, it was Serena Deeb versus Allysin Kay for the NWA Women's Title match. Serena Deeb won via tap out in about 10-11 minutes or so, and the only reason I wanted to really mention that off the top really was because we've seen recently that AEW and NWA appear to be, there's some sort of relationship there, and we've been seeing the NWA Women's title defended. We had Thunder Rosa, who was challenging Cheetah at the last pay-per-view. What do you think about this relationship with the NWA? Is it at all enhancing Dynamite or AEW, or do you think it's more that NWA are actually getting a bit of a push out of this rather than AEW?
I think NWA are getting a fair push from it. Like, I'm still yet to see the benefit of it in All Elite Wrestling, unless All Elite Wrestling end up buying out NWA and suck up their female division belt. To be honest, I think the NWA belt is probably a higher prestige than the AEW belt. Personally, I feel like there's a lot more history there to it, and a lot more prestige.
The belt looks like shit though, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. It looks
like the TNT title before Cody got the new one, like this just silver toy.
Well, to be fair, I'm pretty sure I'm not a big fan of the AEW women's belt either. I think it's tiny, too small. I like history and prestige that goes with the NWA belt, but they're never losing that belt on AEW at the moment, and so I don't see the points of some of these matches. It's just a way to push their star a little bit more. I'm a bit like, all right, fair enough, whatever.
Thunder Rosa was turned up after the match, so maybe they will be having a match, Thunder Rosa v Serena Deeb. I don't know what they'll do with that, but I mean, one of the only things I would say, and this is something that pops up in the very first match, is that I like the fact that AEW just are happy to acknowledge the existence of other wrestling promotions, where in WWE this would never happen. Not now anyway. I mean, back in the day it did happen a couple of times with ECW and, funnily enough, the NWA tag team titles, but it just to live in the real world is handy to just have that for AEW, where they acknowledge there's other promotions out there. They seem to be working quite closely with NWA. And I was actually watching the NWA product before COVID hit, and that's where I saw the likes of Eddie Kingston, saw the likes of Thunder Rosa, Alison Kay, Ricky Starks. You wonder why I like him. It's because I watched him on there, and then saw him sort of come to AEW, and I was like, yes, promotion for the boy. But I haven't watched it since it kind of ceased, and they were doing a weekly YouTube show. It was about 45 minutes long, but you could sort of tell there was some good talent there that was getting some screen time. We had some older people. Do you remember Mr. Kennedy?
Yeah,
he was there. Yep. Scott Steiner made an appearance for a few weeks. Oh. He looked fucking well old. I don't know if you remember James Storm from TNA/Impact. He was part
off the top of my head.
Part of Beer Money.
I remember Beer Money. Yeah,
with Bobby Roode. Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of what they've been doing with NWA. I really want them to bring in Nick Aldis, Magnus. You'll remember him,
the British guy.
Yeah, he is really good. He's like another sort of. Well, he's completely different to Kingston, but he's that level of sort of promo where it's a bit more of a calmer and much more of a, a different style. But he's really good on the mic and solid in the ring as well. I really want them to somehow rope him into doing a few AEW appearances. Plus, it'll be another Brit on the roster, which is always good.
Yeah, he was the guy from Gladiators originally, wasn't he?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that. I remember he originally made his day. He originally came to wrestling through TNA, if I remember correctly, back in the day.
Yeah.
So I remember him appearing in there, and I go, oh, they've signed him.
It was him and like Doug Williams, who used to be like a tag team in TNA.
Yeah.
I remember when they started expanding into the UK, like the UK was a big market for TNA for a while. They used to do those tours over here, and they were a big hit. And they started investing in trying to get some UK talent, but I don't think Magnus was quite ready then, whereas now he's really good. Anyway, Full Gear, first official match. It's Kenny Omega versus Hangman Page. I was shocked to see that this is the opener, and we talk about openers that we like to get the show off on the right foot. In my opinion, this got the show off onto the best foot possible.
Yeah, no, 100%. I was shocked like you when that was announced as the first match, but then I'm not sure why I'm surprised. They seem to do this a lot, AEW, with the especially at pay-per-views. The first match is always one of the big numbers, like in terms of probably one of the top three bouts of the whole evening. I'm pretty sure like they often do like, title matches and that very first one as well. And so like, yeah, looking back, I'm now not so surprised, but I'm so glad that they started off with this match. I think it was, realistically, it's probably the match I think everyone that's watches AEW week in, week out was probably the most anticipated. And yeah, they did what you thought they would do. They both delivered. I think this was interesting. You called it right the way it would go. I called it wrong. I was thinking like they would definitely go for like more of a Hangman win and stuff like that. But now, seeing with what things happen later on in the show, how they're going to push that storyline, I'm sort of glad that they went for the Kenny Omega win. And yeah, it was just all in all just brilliant.
Yeah, another interesting point was that we had Don Callis from Impact Wrestling on the announcing team.
Yeah.
And I was surprised, and they announced him as an Impact Wrestling EVP. So again, AEW kind of showing their willingness to work with people, and that's mainly because Don had called a lot of Kenny's matches in Japan. So they obviously probably wanted to bring him. This is what they're trying to recapture, I think. AEW is trying to get that megastar Japanese peak that Kenny had sort of a few years ago, because there's been criticisms over this first year or so that he hasn't really set the world on fire, and everyone was sort of bigging him up before, saying, okay, he's really big in Japan, so he's going to be great over here or over in America. But he's kind of stuttered and spluttered, and then I think once they got the tag team titles on Hangman and Kenny, things started heating up a little bit. But it was reasonably. I thought what I love most about the match was that it's a great match. It was Kenny and Hangman have been really putting in the work and having some great matches lately. But they didn't. It didn't feel like it needed to go 25 minutes. Like, it easily could have warranted it, but it was a 17-minute. Fat was trimmed, and there was pretty much no wasted movement in this match. I just thought it was a really streamlined, great opener. It didn't drag, which is key to these openers.
Yeah, I must admit, when the match finished, I was surprised it finished. Like, I was like, well, that seems a lot quicker than I thought. In my head, I'm thinking this is going to be a long match, and the way it was done, it was like in One Winged Angel, but it was like, Hangman was sort of, it looked like it was sort of fumbly done. I think that's the intention, was that Hangman was massively trying to get out of it.
Yeah, that terrifies me, that move. It scares me. I just think, I don't know, I just have this horrible vision of someone just landing straight on their neck where they don't tuck it and don't spin round just in time, because there isn't a lot of room for error on that one. It really does frighten me sometimes. When there was like scrambling, obviously it was, I imagine, like you said, it was planned, but it looked like he just sort of snatched it and then just yanked it down. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it was very sort of quick and bang, and it was like suddenly it was just over, and that's what you should. And like in some respect, that's what a good finishing move does. It's just like you get it in, bang, and even if that person's still semi-conscious or whatever and stuff like that, they're not kicking out. And I think that's exactly what they managed to elevate Kenny's finishing move. Both wrestlers come out sort of like better for it, and all stories can continue. It is really good. One of the other bits I really liked about the match, and this wasn't actually even to do with Kenny or Hangman, was a nod to sort of Excalibur. JR asked why he was called the Cleaner, and the VP, whatever his name was from Impact, went on and on and on and on about something, and he didn't answer the bloody question. and then Excalibur went, oh yeah, the reason it's called the Cleaner is because he used to blow into cartridges. And I'm like, that's it. I didn't know that either. No. I was like, thank you for just coming out with that, Excalibur, and just that's why Excalibur is good, and he's so underrated. He just knows things, like he calls moves, he just understands everything that's going on in the wider world of wrestling.
Yeah, when there was a period where he was about a month or so where he wasn't on Dynamite. I think we spoke about it last time, and just it really suffers. And I never thought I'd say that, because I thought it was kind of like you could just shift in any other announcer. But given the history he's got with a lot of these workers and a lot of these wrestlers, he's vital to have that level of intel and history of them. Sure. Even on the Young Bucks and FTR one, there's lots in there that he adds in the promos and whatnot, talking about mainly the Young Bucks, really, because everyone knows that the Revival were in WWE and whatnot. But for those that are just tuning in and hadn't seen the Young Bucks, he adds another level to it. How did you find the story leading into this was? Because we've noticed Kenny is clearly going to be turning heel. They've not made it overly obvious yet. He's a bit sort of tweenerish. He's acting a little bit different. But what do you make of this sort of new Kenny Omega? Like the big grand entrances with the ladies coming out dancing and with the sweepers, and then he's got a new haircut, and he even squashed Sonny Kiss in like 12 seconds in the first round of this tournament, which I thought was a great way to sort of set Kenny's intentions off. It's almost like he's, since the tag team title loss, he's reset and is focused on that world title, and it's coming across well in the week-to-week TV.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for a heel, if I'm being honest, and so Kenny to turn heel is great personally for me. I think it's really good. I feel like they've actually been turning Kenny heel for a long time, and they've just been slowly doing it ever since. And I don't remember when he sort of turned on Marco Stunt. We're talking like 6 months ago here now. And then there was like even a part in BTE that, you know, where he had to go and apologise, and then he went and apologised, and he turned out the door and he started laughing or whatever. Like there's these slow little hints they've been dropping over the period of time, and now he's like broken free from Hangman, should we say, you know, that tag team partnership. You'll see that. I think we're seeing that sort of escalate quicker, which is quite nice. And I love the entrance. I must admit, it's probably my favourite entrance now in AEW. I think it's just so over the top and so grand, but it sort of strikes to what Kenny's new character's sort of like, is this somewhat arrogant person's like, well, of course I'm the best. I want all this stuff said about me, and it's because, and I can back it up. You know, like I'm great. You know, say all that stuff, and none of it's wrong. It's all true, and I love it. I think it's great. I'm waiting for the moment though he starts. Because at the moment he's still coming out of the babyface tunnel. He's not coming out of the heel tunnel yet. So
all the girls they all come out the heel tunnel. So I don't know if it's like a signal that he'll eventually go over that side. But yeah, he doesn't come out. That's it. I wonder if they're going to keep those tunnels forever. But I quite like that there is a little bit of greyness to it, and it's not just pantomime black and white. Here's the face, here's the heel. I know a lot of people get frustrated by that. They're like, well, who are we supposed to cheer for? And it's like, well, whoever you resonate with. Like it really doesn't matter. In most cases, like there's out and out heels like MJF. And then there's people like Kenny who are kind of in transition, but I think will still, if and when the crowds come back, he'll still be popular, even if they try to make him into a full-blown heel. So there's not really much you can do. Yeah,
exactly. He's definitely a heel that the crowds a bit like Jericho, to be honest. Like you know, even if he does some debacle, you know, it's people still cheer him afterwards. They might boo him for that split second, but people still it's like Jericho. People out still singing his intro and stuff like that, and they love him. And it's because people can respect a good wrestler even if they're a heel. People don't need to be the whole sort of pantomime, you know, boo, hate him.
I'm hoping that this is the first of many matches. This is like this obviously not in the next couple of weeks or so, but I want Hangman and Omega to be revisited, like, because I feel like Hangman is kind of like the guy that they want to at some point get the belt on, like the world title. But I like the fact that he's failed against Jericho, and then he's failed again in this endeavour here, and he's got one loss against Kenny reasonably quick, so it wasn't like it was a long drawn out match. Kenny ends up with the belt maybe in the future. Hangman works himself into a position, perhaps even loses that one. But then in a third match, maybe there's maybe Hangman can have the relevant development to finally topple Kenny, and that'll make a great long term story to have over like 18 months. If they can do it right and keep Kenny in the title picture and keep Hangman relevant.
Yeah, I definitely mean it's
because it felt like a first phase match because it was quite short. 17 minutes is not short, but you know they can go longer. We know they can do 20, 25 minutes if they need to, which could be saved for, I don't know, a later on down the line. Yeah,
it sort of somewhat feels like, to be honest, I'd like Kenny to beat Hangman a few more times, but then when it really matters, Hangman gets that win, and might be, as you said, for the world title or something along those lines. But I think that's the way to build it up, because people will go fucking nuts if that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, Orange Cassidy v John Silver.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, you muted for a second
Sorry,
there.
I don't know what happened there. The Skype was playing up, but we will carry on and barrel through. Well, I'll tell you what it did. It said I was muted. It said unmute, and I was like, well, he can hear me, so I'm not. And then I clicked it back, and then obviously it decided actually I was muted. But Orange Cassidy versus John Silver. This was supposed to be the buy-in match, and then I guess the Serena Deeb and Alison Kay match was presented as an option, so it got bumped to the main card. 10 minutes, Cassidy wins and beats John Silver. How did you find this match? Because it was bumped up from the buy-in, but did it earn its place on here, or did it outstay its welcome?
It should have just stayed on the buy-in, if I'm being honest. Like, I appreciate they're forever they're consistently trying to push Orange Cassidy, but in some aspects it was a long drawn out squash match, because they're never going to let Cassidy lose to John Silver. Though John Silver's getting a lot of heat at the moment, he's still nowhere near what Cassidy's got, and so he's never going to win. So it should have definitely been on that buy-in and just cut some of the promos out of the buy-in, and you've got a really good buy-in there. It just wasn't needed, and I think we talk about this every time, especially around events that go that slightly bit too long. This was 3 hours and like 45 minutes, the whole pay-per-view. Take that out and the sort of the build up to it, because there really wasn't a lot of build up to like in terms of the build up on the show. You've saved yourself probably about 20 minutes there, and you're in like a sweet spot, I see, under that sort of 3.5 hour period. And this sort of just it does make it drag a bit sometimes, sometimes when it goes that little bit long. And I did feel like the storyline for this in a build-up was very weak. Like it just wasn't great. And I love both these wrestlers. I think they're great, but it just didn't feel, in comparison to you go through this whole roster of main event, it was probably the one that had the weakest build-up of the lot of them. Yeah,
I'd agree with that. I mean, you can't do 6-month storytelling matches on every pay-per-view, but this was John Silver basically interfered in Orange Cassidy's matches and cost him a few. That's basically the story. And then Orange Cassidy got to beat him on a pay-per-view. I thought it was actually a good match for what it was, and coming off the back of the Kenny and Hangman match, it sort of was a bit of a, it was a step down, don't get me wrong, but it was nice to have that before going into the next match. But in terms of match quality, what did you make of this?
I think it was good. I felt
like it could have been better. I don't know why. I felt like it was. When I saw it, I was like, "That's going to be a really exciting match." Okay, maybe we're not that invested in it from a storyline perspective, but I thought maybe they could almost steal the show. But it was. Don't get me wrong, it was good, but I think that they can do a lot better than that.
My theory on this, and let's say theory, is like John Silver. Do you remember that time when he just went in Dynamite a few weeks back, which just went on a massive rampage around the edge of the ring? I can't remember. It must have been that 4-way tag, and he did all those crazy moves really quickly, really powerful. And I'm yet to see that from him again. I want to see more of that. This little, little hamster that fucking just sprinting around all over the place doing these real quick moves, and everyone's like, "Wow, look at that!" Yeah. He's quite big for this small little guy, but look at the power and stuff like that. And he's good. He does all these sort of power lifts, stuff like that. But I don't know. I would like a little bit more of that. And I don't know. It's also the same point. It's how much can the Orange Cassidy gimmick keep doing the same thing without doing something new, and before people go, we've seen this now so many times. And this is sort of one of my observations, that I would like them to sort of pull Cassidy back a bit, just back to being Trent and the best friends or whatever it is, help, and just sort of doesn't really get too involved. And then when it needs to come out, it comes out, and everyone bloody loves it. I'm looking back at the Jericho trilogy with Cassidy. I feel like it's not. I don't know. I don't feel like Cassidy's been elevated that much now. It feels like he's almost back to where he was with that. And Jericho's obviously stayed at the level in the main card and whatnot. But I kind of wonder what the point was in giving him that sort of 2-1 victory over Jericho now. I've not seen them really build on it. I don't know how you build on it, because like you say, he's such a weird gimmick that it's hard for him to go out there every week and wrestle. And take it on. But I don't know now about that whole I mean, it's good that he gave him the spotlight, but I think he would have been fine coming into this match against John Silver, and we wouldn't have known any different even if he hadn't beat Jericho. Exactly. I just feel like he's good to the card, and he definitely sells it, but let's not just oversell the gimmick. Let's not overuse it so the gimmick dies. And maybe that's because they're using it pretty much every week on Dynamite now. That people are, for me, it's definitely fun, but I
just still put him in little segments backstage where he's doing stuff. That would work better than having him in the ring every week.
Yeah, exactly. You want this guy to just be lazy, be like, oh, I don't really care about having a fight this week and stuff like that, and just being there and stuff like that. And then something happens and it builds up and builds up. And like you could got a 4-month period now where maybe just don't really put him on Dynamite at all in terms of a match, and just build him in just segments and stuff like that, maybe helping a few people out here or there, and then build up to some sort of pay-per-view thing, then use him that way. I don't know.
Yeah, I felt like that because they'd done the Jericho thing. They must have had something ready for him, like a real another good program, but he just sort of went back into the pack, and I was like, oh.
It also, I think, he also gets elevated by the people around him. Like his best match, like I'm not saying John Silver isn't good and that wasn't a reasonable match, but like in my head, like the Jericho matches were great, the Pac match was great. But these are people that really can play, are really good wrestlers, but also good, at storytelling at the same time, and can really work with Orange Cassidy's gimmick. But maybe some of these newer wrestlers don't really get that as much. I don't know. Who knows?
We then move into the TNT title match: Cody versus Darby Allin. This is their 4th meeting, I think. They had a draw, and then Cody won back to back. Before the event, we mentioned I think you said Cody will retain. I was thinking maybe Darby could win. Darby does win, so in the 4th out, and he finally gets the better of Cody and captures the TNT title. And this has been a storyline that really has been going on over a year, because Darby's first match was against Cody and it ended in a draw. And then Cody beat him 2 consecutive matches, once in the TNT title tournament and once I think was on the New Year show that they did. I think it might have been the first episode you started watching actually of Dynamite. And then finally Darby gets that monkey off his back and beats Cody and captures the TNT title. What did you think of this as a match? The story between Darby and Cody, which clearly is not finished, and also the fact that the TNT title has changed hands, because that's now, that's 2 changes or even 3 reasonably in reasonably quick succession. Yeah,
I think it's an interesting one. Like my sort of theory behind why it wasn't going to change hands was because in my head the TNT title should only really change on TV on TNT.
Strange,
rather than pay-per-view. So I was looking at it and thinking, first of all, why is this match a pay-per-view? Surely, it's the type of thing that you use to, win on TV. And now I'm looking at it and thinking, well, what does this title really represent? It just feels maybe like the secondary belt now. Not that's a bad thing, and it feels like it's got the prestige to it. The story behind it, I think, is been great. Long-term storytelling. I think the whole sort of Cody, I feel like this is one of these interesting points as well. Cody's sort of in this sort of grey area at the moment where he's definitely a babyface, but he has heel moments to him, and you just still don't quite
Cocky
know.
Cocky fucker, isn't he?
Exactly.
Really annoys Arn Anderson when he does his press-ups.
Yeah, exactly. But you just don't know where fully he definitely sits. And I like that. I like there's a bit more depth to these characters and so forth. But yeah, it was a great match. I think I think the finish was just a bit meh. I'm still yet to see. I don't feel I like Darby Allin a lot. I still just don't feel like he's got a finishing move that would just knock someone out every single time. That's I think his problem. That coffin drop just looks weak as piss, to be honest. Yeah. And so I'd just like to see him maybe start whistling out a new sort of finishing move that just really a bit like they can protect. He doesn't have to use it all the time, but one they can use every now and then that just finishes a match. Yeah. I would like to see that, especially for someone they're clearly trying to push and that obviously gets a lot of attention. I think it's a good move. I was listening in the scrum afterwards that people were asking Tony Khan that did he feel proud that this was a homegrown thing, and that annoyed me a little bit because a lot of these people they're not homegrown, they're from the indie scene, whereas and the only people that can probably really say like homegrown is maybe WWE with their school, but all of these guys have been on so many other promotions and stuff like that. It's the other promotion thinking what it's just that they're a bigger player, if that makes sense. But yeah, I thought it was a good match. I feel the finish was just a bit weak in my opinion.
Yeah, it was interesting about their 4 matches is one ended in a draw, so you didn't get a proper finish there. The 2 Cody wins were roll-ups and quick pins in that sense. I think one was after a coffin drop. He put his knees up,
Yeah.
he got a cradle, and the second one was the coffin drop landed, and Cody kind of reversed it as he landed and got the pin. And in this one, Darby gets the win over Cody with, there was exchanging all sorts of different cradles basically, and he eventually gets enough leverage to get the 3 count. I'm interested to see when, because they will have a match again. I've no doubts about it down the line. I'm interested to see eventually when one of them gets a decisive pin over the other and who that is. I think that'll be telling. I think that's one that they should save for Darby to have, just to sort of put a stamp on that he's maybe better than Cody at this time. But I did find it interesting they again avoided doing like a decisive finish, and went through the sort of quick pin, which can happen on any given night. I guess the story you could tell there, and that's what Cody can say. He wasn't beaten down like he was against bloody Brody Lee, where he was just mullered in 5 minutes or whatever it was. Team Taz then come out and fucking beat them both up, and Will Hobbs turned out to sort of fend them off. But just a quick word on Taz. I never realised he was this good on the mic. I never saw him in ECW really, so maybe that's where his main stuff was. And WWE certainly didn't give him much of a chance. And then from then on, he's always been an announcer to us. But in the lead up to this on Dynamite, he's just fire on the mic. He's really good.
Yeah, he can cut a promo really good in the ring, and that's sort of what you want. You want someone that can come out, kick things off within a couple of minutes on that mic, and he can definitely do that. I feel that was actually Team Taz is turned out to be a good little faction. I feel like for AEW, it's not too big. It's full of guys that people generally are quite hard. I'm not too sure about this whole recruiting Will Hobbs. I know it's part of the story, but I don't feel like he's the type of person that I would put in that team anyway.
No.
So I know it's, as I said, it's part of the story, and he definitely won't join because he's definitely a babyface. But like, I like that it's small. They all just don't give it, not a shit, but like they're just hard, and they're definitely on the heel side of the fence.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Taz in itself is just great on that mic at the moment.
And I feel like Ricky Starks could handle his own on the stick, but he definitely helps out Cage though. Sort of has to say very little. Like, definitely that's where I'll say Cage's weaknesses is on the mic. So having Taz there is just great, and Starks can handle himself. We've seen that. He's really good on the mic, but they'll be feuding no doubt, and Will Hobbs will be thrown into that as well. And it'll be interesting to see whether Darby does a similar thing to what Cody started doing, where he defended almost every week. I think it was like every other week in the end, or whether it becomes a bit more deliberate in terms of who gets the title shots, because you run out of people quickly doing it that quickly. Cody certainly did, and we had people getting sort of 2 lots of title shots, which was which kind of run its course. But maybe Darby will bring a different dimension to that, and he's now the new face of TNT, which they kept making a big deal of.
I think they I'd like to see Darby hold on to it for a fair while now. It feels like that TNT title, I know Cody held it a lot at the start, but he was like doing it week in, week out. I would quite like to see Darby become the longest holder of this title. I just feel like, it'll build Darby to have, this ability to, be a title holder and so forth. I feel like there's some really good feuding to go in between him and Team Taz. It'd be interesting. I definitely feel like Dynamite's, he doesn't need to defend that title. For example, there's clearly a couple of tag matches between Team Taz and Darby and Will Hobbs and stuff like that, coming up, and maybe that's how they do it, and just pick and choose those title matches now.
I just don't want Ricky Starks to feud with Darby anymore, because I know he won't come out on the top of it. He needs to have a good feud to himself that he can win, but I know he's all tied into this now, so he's gonna have to take the L and come back maybe early next year.
Maybe, who knows?
QT Marshall and Dustin Rhodes cut a promo. Dustin's still pretty good. That's setting up a bunkhouse match against the Butcher and Blade on Dynamite. So,
what is a bunkhouse match? Because I still don't know what it is.
Funny enough, when I've been watching the old 80s stuff, I watched one the other day. I think you have to throw them over the top of like a. What do you have to do? It's a battle royale.
over the top rope,
where wrestlers wore bunkhouse gear, which is blue jeans and cowboy boots. Similar to a street fight, weapons are allowed. To win the match, wrestler had to be the last one in the ring, with all the other wrestlers having been thrown over the top rope.
huh?
So it sounds like a hardcore-ish battle royale, but they did it once with a cage, which I saw recently, and I was like, what on earth is this? They had some weird stuff in the 80s that I never had known or seen before. Like, I watched the War Games the other day, and I was like, Jesus Christ. These... they wouldn't... I know they tried to do it with blood and guts, actually, but I didn't realise they did all this. Then got they announced the match between Penta El Zero M, or Miedo, versus Rey Fenix, so they're going to battle again, which is going to be an excellent match. Hopefully Phoenix doesn't fucking break his back nearly like he did in the first one.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised he's back so quick.
What happens to him? Like, he dies, and can't wrestle the next week, but then he's back the following week. Like, I don't know if I'm assuming he's really just resilient and quick recovery, but he that was scary when he lands on his back of his head and neck.
Yeah.
But they'll have a good match on Dynamite, and then also Tay Conti versus Red Velvet. Not interested.
Yeah.
Women's title match, Nyla Rose versus Hikaru Shida. We saw this at Double or Nothing, but it was a street fight, or it was a hardcore match of sorts. 14 minutes, kind of dragged. I felt like actually it started off and in the middle was really good, but then it kind of fell apart towards the end. And I don't know, it seemed a bit overbooked towards the back end of it, like pulling each other off pins, and then Vicky getting involved, and then Nyla kicking out of stuff, then having to be kneed 14 times in the head to win. I was like, the whole ending of it just kind of fell apart for me. Like, it could have just been trimmed as a decent title defense for Shida, but it all got a bit sloppy in the end.
Yeah, it was a strange one. Like, I definitely feel like, I guess rewind it. I guess it hasn't really been playing out on Dynamite. This is another thing that's been playing out on Dark a lot, I've been noticing, and it's so I don't feel as invested in this storyline as potentially some of the other stuff, because I don't watch Dark, which was a little bit frustrating.
There wasn't that much more on Dark, to be fair, though. Like, there was a promo from Vicky saying we're not wrestling anymore until Shida accepts it, and that was pretty much it. I was like, well, then they disappeared for literally a month until Shida accepted it. But
yeah, but I think this is the problem with the women's division at the moment. It feels like they had to put Nyla out there because they with Statlander obviously out injured, and I don't know, like, it just doesn't feel like there's much.
Britt Baker's only just come back from injury, so it's too soon.
Swole. I don't know why he didn't push Swole. Maybe that's for the next one. Who knows? But it's. Because that's another thing. Like, Swole got the win over Britt Baker. You think she'll get the push, and she seems to have not been pushed really since that point.
Did they not have a match on Dynamite? Swole and Shida.
Did they?
I feel like they did, and it wasn't very good.
Maybe I've not. Maybe they have, and I haven't seen it. But it's it's just the build up for this one just a bit like it wasn't great. The best bit of the whole thing was the end when Vicky Guerrero basically took out, but basically told Nyla Rose off, and he was like, suddenly this big beast has suddenly been sort of put in a place by Vicky Guerrero.
I just assumed she was going to lamp Vicky, and that would be the last we saw of Guerrero, but she didn't. I was like, oh, actually, she's still got some more legs in it.
Yeah. Which is and I think that's a real interesting play now on that storyline. I feel like it allows Nyla Rose to go off and do something quite interesting that's not going for the title, because obviously all she's been is like go for the title, but she needs something else because she's had it. I feel like they don't want to give it straight back to her, but maybe a bit later on down the line, and there's probably a few other people they could put it on. So that was good. Like, I know what you mean by the match. It did feel like it dragged. It was definitely the match I picked up my phone the most just to look what was going on Twitter and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm just struggling to understand what they're going to do with the women's division. Like, at the moment, I just really struggled to understand which direction it's going.
No, it's just sort of stuck in the same. It's in like a transition mode. It's just not going up. It's going down a little bit sometimes, and it's not. We've spoken about it so many times that it's just still not. It's not fixed. Whatever the problem is not quite there. And I know it's been tricky because they've had a few injuries and COVID has not helped at all, but You feel like there's still enough kind of talent there to do it if you really put the effort in to think about it. Fortunately, we then got FTR versus the Young Bucks. 29 minutes. Now, it didn't feel like 29 minutes to me. I really enjoyed this match, and to be honest, coming into the match, I was a bit annoyed by the stipulation that the Young Bucks had put on, because it kind of forecasted the result almost, because we've already had Cody not challenging for the world title because he lost the same stipulation at the same event last year, and I was like, could you not think of something different to just put the stip on, or just not have the stipulation? It didn't seem like it was a necessary escalation for the story. But there was a lot to live up to here. People have been talking about the Young Bucks versus FTR for years, and we finally get it. Yes, it's post kind of COVID, which means there's a very small crowd to feed off of. But in my opinion, this was the best sort of COVID match I've seen since the crowds went away and we had reduced footfall in. I really, 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 really enjoyed this, like every minute of it, and it ran about the same time as FTR versus Hangman Page and Kenny, but just felt so much better. I don't know what it was, but they've told. I feel like all four men told a great story. Even if the storyline leading into it wasn't set up the best, because we've had a bit of Young Buck heelish stuff, and it's kind of like almost two heels fighting at one point. But that's enough of me pouring fantastic praise in it, and it's your turn to shit all over it now and tell me why I'm wrong.
No, I was going. So I went into this match, and if I'm being honest, I've not yet enjoyed an FTR match in AEW. Really,
I feel fuming.
I know. Don't get me wrong. I feel like they're great on the mic. They're great storytellers, but actually in the ring, I just find them a little bit boring. I don't know why. I've just
that's
not
kind
really...
of their gimmick, though. That's kind of what this was. It's like traditional old school tag wrestling versus the flipping and the flopping. And because Matt was injured, they couldn't really do much of the flipping and the flopping. They had to find alternative means. I mean, we'll talk about the finish, but that was just genius, in my opinion, what they had to resort to.
Yeah, so it was. But that all being said, this was this was easily my favourite match of the card, easily, and it's probably my second favourite tag match of the year after the Hangman Kenny Young Bucks match. There was something that those two did together that just seemed to work really well, and as you said, I think it was the difference between some of the being able to mix up between some of the flip-flopping, between some of the old school. I liked, again, nod to Excalibur to consistently, pull out, that's, a nod to the Hardys, that's a nod to the Dudleys, and like
Steiner Brothers.
Exactly. It just makes it a bit more real. And just little things like when they went to the top rope and they mentioned when Alex Reynolds got knocked out. No, this is the move that no, that was something else. Sorry, I've gone off track. But I was thinking of something else. I know what I was thinking about. But it was just like the way it was sort of mixed together. It just didn't feel too one-sided at all. It's I didn't know where it was going to go. So much so that, about 20 minutes in my head, I'm starting to think, well, how'd they get the Young Bucks out of this without them winning it and potentially FTR? Maybe they go for the full 60 minutes here and it just finishes. And that's what I swear in my head what they were going to do about sort of like 15, 20 minutes in, because I was so in awe of this match. And I was like, it can keep going quite happily. And they could probably be the first, hour match that just gets, known. And then that timed out. They haven't lost technically because, it's just that they haven't got the titles. And then it just enables that story to continue building in the Young Bucks, the FTR, who's the greatest. We still haven't got a decider. And in a funny sort of way, I'm a little bit gutted they didn't maybe go that route, because, I feel like I would like to see them wrestle more often. And who knows, mate. But it was such a good match. They were all great, from when was it Cash or Dax who had the cut hand and stuff like that, and just playing on the little bits and telling these stories throughout the match. It worked so much better without Tully being there and actually just being full out wrestling for them anyway, I think.
And also it ties into the end, because the FTR throw the kitchen sink at at the Young Bucks. They can't get a pin on them. Either they roll out the ring or they get close enough where they can grab the ropes or they kick out. And in the end, without Tully's kind of guidance, Cash kind of panics and thinks, well, I'm going to try and do something that's completely out of character. A springboard 450 off the ropes, misses it, gets super kicked, and then loses that way. So every angle was covered in this match, and I feel like if it had a crowd there, like a full blown full arena, this may have eclipsed the Kenny and Hangman and Young Bucks match earlier in the year. I really feel like this would have been blowing the roof off of the place, especially when the Young Bucks won. But for a COVID era match, this is easily the best match, singles or tag, that I've seen since all this bollocks had to kick off. So incredible. And that was with what I thought was a bit of a shoddy job leading into it with the stories. I really couldn't. I mean, why were the Bucks acting like twats for so long? Like, you were basically almost getting two heel teams to. They could just played the ultimate baby faces and just rode into the match and walked out like that. But I don't know if you've got any opinion on the route to this, but they, in the end, all's well that ends well. But
personally, I like them turning a bit heel. Like they I don't feel like they pushed it too far that they went fully heel.
They kicked Tony Schiavone.
Yeah, but I quite enjoyed that, in a funny sort of way. It's like that type of thing where, Chris Jericho's consistently telling Tony to shut up and stuff like that. I sort of thought, it's just all sort of like, a bit tongue-in-cheek and it was
if
just...
they kicked JR, that would have been the end of it. There's no coming back from that.
Yeah, but it's just like, I don't know, like, it was like, it felt like things hadn't worked, so they had to change things up slightly. And to be honest, I personally were getting a bit bored of just this really, one-dimensional baby-faced Young Bucks. So they're great wrestlers, don't get me wrong, but like just being goody two-shoes just really didn't do it for me personally. I like them with that bit more of an edge, that bit more of that split personality type of character and stuff like that. And once again, this is another factor where BTE does a great job of, supplementing some of these matches where, you learn a lot about the Young Bucks in just watching BT on YouTube. So like, and their sort of turn and stuff like that. I personally, for me, I felt that I was more just frustrated. I felt like, I know a lot of people was being there going, oh, this has been years in the making and stuff like that. I felt like they fought each other too quick. If anything, they probably could have, waited it out like a year or so before that match actually happened and really, really, really built it. Like, so to me, it was only like 6 months, maybe. Well, the build out, I guess 6 months is still quite a long time in terms of wrestling, but it felt like it could have gone on a bit longer, personally.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Fair enough. We then go on to Matt Hardy versus Sammy Guevara, the Elite Deletion match, cinematic tripe. This was just so long. So long. It was entertaining. Don't get me wrong, there were certainly some funny bits in it, and like the ending was fucking horrible. It was like it really took a turn for like the series. I actually felt bad for Sammy in the end, like almost getting murdered by Matt Hardy in the Dome or whatever it was. But this felt like it went on forever. There was lots of nudges and winks and bits and pieces based on old deletion matches that I guess are in Impact now. Cameos from Hurricane Helms, and the best bit was Gangrel. I'm not going to lie, seeing Gangrel back was just brilliant. But Private Party show up, Santana and Ortiz, they show up, and we get Roman candles being fired at each other. Like there was some good moments in it, but I just generally don't like these type of matches, and it just went on too long for me. Yeah,
so I was thinking I would be in the same. Once I realised it was a cinematic match, I was thinking, oh no, here we go. But I quite enjoyed it. I think the reason I'm enjoying more of the AEW cinematic matches over the WWE cinematic matches is there's still an element of wrestling to them, but it's obviously therefore a lot more choreographed in terms of some of these the table stunts, with off the ladder in the dome and stuff like that. That was fucking disgusting. Like, it was like you can still tell they're putting their bodies on the line for a lot of these parts of the match. And it may not have all been one continuous shot, but it definitely felt like it had some good moments. I know what you meant by the cameos. I felt like there was maybe too many cameos. A nod or a wink here or there would have been fun, but like in the end there was just everyone in. There's just too many people, if anything, and it just took away. The Roman candle bit was interesting, but that's never going to hurt anyone, and so it's like why do it, apart from it just looking a bit spectacular. The ending I thought was brilliant, and in a funny sort of way, I was watching it and thinking, they put Sammy in that wheelbarrow and stuff like that, and you're like, fucking hell, he's like been murdered, and and stuff like what's going on. But like what you said the other day, Sammy will make a great babyface one day. Could this be the opportunity that Sammy comes back as a babyface at one point? Who knows? But like it feels to me like Sammy can't just come back. Like he needs to be off for a long period of time and then jump, like Matt Hardy, like 2 months down the line or something like that, or he just can't come back. And they need to address, this brutal satanic Matt Hardy that just suddenly appeared. Even bloody JR was going, oh crikey, what's going on here? This is far too much now. Yeah. And it was, but it was I somewhat enjoyed it. Gangrel appearing was funny. I'm assuming Hurricane. I'm assuming he's from Impact.
He was in WWE for a while.
But I mean, because there was a mention, and there was the reason I was saying it was because they were like, it took 2 years to finish this storyline, long term, and I'm assuming that was like an Impact storyline or something along those lines that they've just sort of finished off.
Yeah. It was. That's exactly right. That's my understanding of it anyway. But Hurricane Helms was in WWE before Impact, and then went to Impact at some point and got snarled up in this. But he's been rescued now. Yeah. Well, look, I can't handle much more of these cinematic matches. It feels to this stage now they're just kind of forcing it. I kind of get this one because of the horrendous luck that Matt and Sammy have had in their feud. Like, I wouldn't have trusted them just to do a live match again in case something went wrong. So at least this way it was far more controlled, and they a bit more safety around it. If they need to stop, they clearly did at points. They could, but I don't want to be seeing these every pay-per-view, and we're getting them every pay-per-view. We had the fucking tooth match last time, tooth and nail.
Yeah, that was meant to be a buy-in though, to be fair, like that.
It got bumped up. We had the Stadium Stampede, which was good until fucking Matt Hardy transformed underwater.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. And a couple of these things happened in this, where it's just unrealistic. I don't mind these pre-taped matches in, like, random locations. Even if they stop in, I'm not noticing they're stopping and it looks like one continuous shot. I don't mind that. I just don't want some of this bollock stuff. Like the bit that annoyed me in this one was the fucking hologram of Matt Hardy at the very front start from the fucking drone when Sammy turned up. I was like, fucking hell, right, straight away that's off on a bad foot, because that's never happening in real life. I appreciate it's a show and it's not real in general, but just try and keep some realism to it, and I'll be more than happy.
Yep. We then got Lance Archer beating someone up against a brick wall. Jake Roberts cut another promo. He can still talk when he needs to. I've even noticed Lance Archer's actually pretty good when he gets his chance now. I feel like he's come a long way and improved. There was actually a really good promo he cut, but it was on Dark. I remember it, and I was thinking, cool. Maybe they didn't want to put it on Dynamite in case he bollocks it up, but I'm hoping that's Jake rubbing off on him, or he's just getting better. But the trouble with Jake is he's so good that he can overshadow Lance with just how good he is on the mic. And he's fucking big as well, so Lance doesn't look as big because Jake's a fucking big man as well.
Yeah, I do like the fact that they seem to be pairing off some of these, like at least getting some of these guys experience with old school guys that are really good. You've got Tully, you've got Arn Anderson, you've got Jake, you've got Taz. It's like they're sort of in some way sort of Matt Hardy sort of like mentoring these young people to really help with them. And I you can see that's clearly what they're trying to do, even if it's not the point of it in the show. But I think that's really good. I feel like with Lance Archer, they don't know what to really do with him.
No.
Like, I feel like he could easily be a world champion. He's clearly a top. This is the problem, though. I'd say clearly a top 5 guy, but there's so many top 5 guys out there. There's more than 5, and that's the problem. Is I don't know.
Room for 'em all.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the problem I'm seeing at the moment. And this is the reason you probably see with like Team Taz. It's like they've not got the room to put them in. Well, they are in the top 5, actually, saying that, aren't they? But like Cage is second. But there seems to be too many, and with potentially Pac on his way back as well. It's like, how are they going to have room for like the Jerichos, the MJFs, the Codys, the Lance Archer, the Mox, all these people, and that's just 5. So and then Kenny's Hangman. Like, you've probably got about between 10 and 15 what I'd call people that could win that world title, which is great in terms of depth, but equally at the same time it means people just don't get used an awful lot sometimes. And I feel like Lance Archer's unfortunately in that position where he's probably not fully being used. And to be fair, they sort of addressed that in some of these VTs, which I'm sort of quite glad they do. It's like Taz is addressing it really in his promos. It feels like Jake's addressing it, in his promos, and it's like, we're not given our opportunity, and we're and at least they address it. And I feel like Tony and the bookers and all like that clearly know they're not booking these guys as much as they probably would like to, but at least they it still gets them over a bit.
There's only one way to solve that.
What's that? Sack 'em all.
3-hour Dynamite.
No, I can't do it.
No, they've got another show lined up. I don't know what it is, but it's meant to be an hour. So
that's how it starts, though, isn't it?
I know, but they have said it won't be like Dark. So I don't know what it is. It may even be announced when this is published. I don't think it will, but hopefully by the end of this year we'll find out what that is. And had the pandemic not happened, I think they would have already had it. But it's a good problem to have. But yeah, it does feel like some people are wasted. And Lance Archer was a bit unlucky because he got, I don't know if he got COVID, or at least he got in contact with someone with it and had to miss like a couple of weeks. They were doing that 6-man tag, wasn't they? I think it was with Cage and Starks and Archer versus Hobbs, Darby and Moxley. Then Lance had to miss that week because he was quarantining. That's when they done
that
the
match
Eddie Kingston.
Seems to get cancelled.
Yeah, it got cancelled, and then Eddie Kingston took on Moxley, and now we end up going down that route, which couldn't have been planned. I refuse to believe that was what the plan was, but I think after their match they decided to go with that. But we'll get to that because we're at the co-main event. MJF versus Jericho, 16 minutes. If MJF wins, he joins the Inner Circle despite Santana. I know Santana's not bothered, actually. It's mainly Ortiz and Sammy that didn't want him in. They've had run-ins. They've had a town hall. They've had the Dinner Debonair fucking Broadway show. I mean, before we get into the match, what do you feel like? This isn't done either. This is clearly going to go with MJF doing something dastardly to Jericho and Jericho going full babyface. It's just a question of who he drags babyface with him. But how did you feel like the build up to this first phase of the relationship between Jericho and MJF has gone? Because some people really did not like that Dinner Debonair.
Oh, really? I really enjoyed it. I feel like it was one of those things. It was only like a 5-ish minute segment, and I can handle that on a Dynamite, like just something a bit stupid, something a bit different, add something, slightly wacky. And I feel like, MJF and Jericho are the only two people that could have done that Dinner Debonair. Yeah. And I feel like it worked. It sort of helped tell the story that these two unique characters, and they're quite similar in a funny sort of way, except, MJF is very much the junior to Jericho's senior that's really trying to, bark to him and stuff. And I think it's really, I feel like they've done the build up for this one well, like really, really well. And I just want more of it, and I know I'm going to get more of it now. Yeah. Now that to give away people, well, now he's won the match. So
spoilers.
The spoilers, but it was. I think it was really well done. I feel like with Jericho now, I look at Jericho and just feel like he wants to just try different things. It clearly is. He tried, obviously, the Mimosa match with Cassidy.
He needs to be reined in sometimes, though, because apparently the Din and Debonair was supposed to be, at one point it was a dream in Jericho's head, and I was like, oh god, luckily they didn't go down that route. Tony Khan was like, no. But he needs to be regulated. You can't let him run too much riot.
Well, he did come out and say the whole. Remember when Matt Hardy did his entry and he appeared all over the ring, and he's like that was Jericho's idea as well. So I definitely know what you mean. He's definitely got this artistic flair that he wants to get out there and do something different, and AEW allowing him to do that. But as long as it keeps relatively well, and I'm quite happy for him to try some of these things and see how it goes and stuff like that, as long as it's kept to like a Dynamite segment, that's like a 5-10 minute section. We try saying, if did it work, no it didn't work, then just bin it, move on. But I feel like it was good. I enjoyed it, and I am interested to see where it goes. I've got my theory. We've not even really spoken about the match, but I've got my theory where I think it will go. That, as you said, and you alluded to it, it's about how does MJF take control of the Inner Circle, and who stays within the Inner Circle, and Jericho goes full babyface, and who sort of sticks on the side of Jericho. Does Jericho take? I'm assuming he'll end up taking Matt Hager with him to babyface because you got your Wardlows and they're sort of similar. Equally, Hager was the only one that was there with Jericho at that point, and it would be interesting that he manages to flip, the people that hated MJF at the start. I think there's an interesting story there. So yeah, I think it's a matter of when will that happen, because it would definitely make the most compelling storyline. It might not happen, but I think that's where they should be going.
Yeah. I like the match itself. I felt was okay. I really liked the finish with the baseball bat being thrown in, and then MJF collapsing, pretending that Jericho hit him. Aubrey turns around, starts yelling at Jericho, saying, "Have you just done that?" And as he's distracted, MJF can roll him up and get the tights. I thought that was a really clever way, because they mentioned that he's willing to go to win it any way he can, and that was a clever finish. But the match itself, I thought, was just okay. Like. Jericho's fucking old now. That's the only thing. It's like, how many more years has he realistically got in him? Because he's an old boy now. Needs to have his rest.
That's exactly it. I feel like I've been noticing this the more I've been watching Jericho. Like, I think he's brilliant on the mic. I think he's a great commentator. He does that whole back in the early 90s where WWE had that heel commentator all the time, and he does that really well.
Bobby.
Yeah, that's it, Bobby. But I feel like, and he definitely does some stuff in the ring that's really good, but I feel like he's slowing down a bit, and I feel like it's that the matches themselves are not spectacular anymore. I'm not going to get a spectacular match from Jericho. What I get from Jericho is a really good storyline, something different, and he'll amuse me in that way, which is what I definitely get every time. But I won't be getting my high impact or proper wrestling that you might get from some of the other matches. But that's fine. I can live with that. But there is going to be a point where he will walk away from wrestling, I would imagine. I don't think we're a million miles away from it. I think he'll still, have some capacity in terms of being, the man on the mic, or he might lead a faction a bit like a Taz and stuff like that. He might do a really good job at doing something like that, but we'll see. He's got so many other plates he's spinning, he might just walk away for good.
Yeah, exactly. We had a little backstage segment with Orange Cassidy, best friends, Kip Sabian, Penelope Ford, and Miro interrupt it. Kip wants an apology because he almost injured Penelope on Dynamite, and then Kip slaps him. Cassidy doesn't react, and they walk off. I don't know what they're doing with some of this stuff. Like Kip and Miro, I feel like I love Kip obviously because he's British, but Miro surely has more upside than hanging around with little Kip. Like, he's devastatingly good in the ring. Like, he could be just the trouble is they've got Lance Archer as a monster, and Brian, like, they've got a lot of big guys now that have just suddenly appeared in the last sort of 6 months, and Miro's another one of those. And I get the impression that Miro is doing stuff that he enjoys, so he's happy doing it, so he doesn't need to be like pushed to a title or anything like that. But I'm not sure whether it makes compelling television every week. when the arcade machine's getting broken. They're like leaning into the gamer thing, which we kind of appreciate, but even for us, we're a bit like, ain't that big a deal.
Yeah. I think you're right. Like, in a funny sort of way, like, they bring in another big guy. Let's do something different that we've not done with him before. And that's sort of what this whole, being the tag and stuff like, which is good. I feel like they've paired him up with Kip mainly. Well, they've obviously got things in common about the Twitch and stuff like that, but it's like with Jimmy Havoc sort of going and Kip and Jimmy Havoc getting a bit of a push there. It feels like, it felt bad luck for Kip and all like that. That was completely out of his hands, and he was starting to get a bit more TV time. And, he was one of the few that were regulars in the start of the pandemic that, the company could rely on. And it sort of feels like the company have gone, right, here you go. You and Miro pair up like that. This will definitely give you some TV time, Kip. This is sort of a bit of a thank you for being around at that period of time when they did struggle for matches. I feel like that's sort of the angle on that sort of happened probably behind the scenes. I sort of feel like it's a foregone conclusion that Miro and Kip are going to beat the best friends in whatever capacity they end up, having that final match in. Mainly because they've been pushing the best friends for a long time. They've gotten close to titles. They've missed out, and it feels like, how much more can you keep pushing best friends? Whereas it feels like it's a good opportunity for them to push Miro. And the best friends just came out of that title thing with FTR. And it's like, right,
they'll be good opponents for the Young Bucks, wouldn't they? Miro and Kip, like they can get them to that level.
Exactly, and it's a good opportunity for if Miro and Kip, be best friends, then it suddenly puts Miro and Kip in a good light in that tag team division, that they could have those sort of matches and so forth. They did say something similar with Jimmy Havoc and Kip. They I can't remember who they beat at the time, but they beat someone and it's suddenly like, oh, you're now like actually probably in the top 5 of the tag team because you've just beaten that one team. I think it was SoCal. They beat SCU, which suddenly just elevated them to like, all right, well, you're clearly a main tag team now and stuff like that. So I feel like that's what they're doing with this. I feel like they're just going around about a bit of a strange way. The machine. They probably just need to hurry up and get that part of that storyline.
Need to get that fucking wedding out of the way with.
It's
going to be bad. When it happens, it will be bad if they do it. If history's going to tell you anything, wrestling weddings will go bad, either literally or in the narrative. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't think we've even had his stag do yet, have we? Like, he was talking about it, and then we had Billy Mitchell turn up on Dynamite.
Wasn't that the stag do, Billy Mitchell, where he turned up?
Yeah, but they didn't show anything of it. They just showed Billy Mitchell smiling.
That was it. That's all they needed to do.
I mean, who the fuck knows Billy Mitchell other than us two? Like,
well, Miro did. I was watching
Miro
Miro's
does.
No, he didn't. He didn't know who he was.
No, he didn't
until afterwards. And then someone sent him the video because someone got really angry with him for doing that segment with Billy Mitchell. And he was like, "Who's this guy?" And then someone went, "Oh, watch this." And he watched it. And he's like, "Oh, right, well, whatever."
Madness. Main event: Moxley versus Eddie Kingston. If you'd asked me that 4 months ago, I would have said, "What are you smoking?" But they've it's an I Quit match for the world title. The promos and TV bits and spots and the build up to this one was just phenomenal. Like, Kingston kind of has one gear, but he's really good at that one gear. I'm really interested to see where he goes after this, because there's only so much shouting and hollering you can kind of get away with before people just get turned off by it. But I felt like this sort of truncated run that Moxley and this collision course of Kingston they've had, delving into their history, talking about them being friends back in the day and how Moxley kind of hit the big time going to WWE and Kingston got left behind. Like, the common story is that Kingston had to sell his wrestling boots earlier in the year when the pandemic hit because he couldn't get any work. And then just a few months later, he's challenging Moxley for the world title for the second time. This time it's main event in a pay-per-view. Just before we get into the match itself, what did you think of the build-up to this? And are you as surprised as I am that Kingston's managed to get into this spot? Because it kind of didn't look on the cards from when he first arrived. I thought he'd make a good mid to upper person, but he's got there. Yeah,
I feel like the build-up's been great. And I feel like we probably need to tip our cap a little bit to Kingston on a lot of this, because it's him at the end of the day, I think it feels like, I don't feel like it's been planned. I feel like he's just taken his opportunity where things have been presented. So like the thing like where he didn't get thrown over the ropes, that was clearly a mistake. But they just went like they sort of called it, and then some people on obviously the internet said, well, he didn't go over the ropes, and he used that in his promo, and it felt like, oh, well, yeah, he's got a point there. And then with the when he put Kingston to sleep, suddenly it was like, well, that was probably all a part of the story, but it felt like Kingston then used that to his advantage to keep saying, well, actually, I'm this big guy. Because it definitely felt like they were just trying to push him as this mid-card, head of this faction. But it felt like Kingston kept pushing these narratives when he was doing his promos, whether not that was what AEW wanted him to do. He was pushing it. And then,
it felt natural, didn't it?
Exactly. And that was really good, and it put AEW, if they weren't planning already, in a position where we need to address this. But the story was so good and so compelling. It was a great build up, but in a funny sort of way, it's like Eddie's meant to be the heel here, King Moxley's the babyface, but like it's this thing again with AEW. They don't really do heel babyface as real complex characters, because you are willing Kingston on, like it feels very much like this rags to riches story over the past sort of 4 months, and you sort of, you don't want to see him quit in this match. You want to see him get the win by any means necessary. But equally at the same time, you don't want Mox to not be your champion. It puts you in a hard position as a fan. I enjoy being in those positions. I don't want just to be bread and butter. Tell me who I want, who's going to win, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. So yeah, I thought the build up was phenomenal, and I like the fact they're throwing photos up there of them as younger as well and stuff like that, which just sort of just adds more to the context that they knew each other for parts. And there was a part, in the build up in Dynamite where they couldn't touch each other. Moxley was referring to his mum and by his mother's name and stuff like that. And it's these elements were just, it was gritty and it was real, or what was made to be real felt real. And it was great, I felt, the build up.
It was actually quite heartbreaking to see Kingston have to quit in the end. And I mean, he had a fucking bulldog choke wrapped around him with barbed wire, so it was an escalation that was probably needed to make him quit. But the match itself, obviously, it was a brutal, bloody encounter. It was never going to be a technical wrestling match. It was never designed to be that. It was exactly what I was expecting. Some people don't like these matches. I think as long as you don't do them every pay-per-view or every month, this earned its place to be an I Quit match because of the story they told. And then once they get in there, it is what it is. Like it's a hardcore, brutal, bloody encounter with barbed wire, with thumbtacks, with chairs, with all sorts of painful looking moments. I mean, Kingston got out some alcohol from Doc Sampson's desk and poured that all over the back of Moxley, who had at that time got thumbtacks at his back. What did you make of the match overall? Because it actually only went 18 minutes, which again, I think was a good time for this, because you don't want to drag it out too much.
Yeah, it was a really good match. I must admit I'm a fan of sort of like the more of the hardcore wrestling, so this was sort of right up my street. I feel like as well, like you got to be appreciative like how long Moxley went on for after he got put into the thumbtacks. Usually that's something that happens very near the end of a match, because people are going to have these tacks stuck in them for quite some period of time, and that's going to be painful, especially if you're going to have to do all these other moves and stuff like that. And so to keep going for the time that he did afterwards, it pretty much happened, it felt like, in the middle of the match. And so I was massively impressed with that. Like, it was a hardcore match, and it was it was an I Quit match, but it was like done in such a hardcore way, and I really, really enjoyed it. I felt like they told a really good story in it, and I feel like both men have been elevated. Well, Mox is the champion; it's not hard to keep elevating him. But with Kingston, it's now like I feel like he's put himself in a really good position that AEW have got someone good on their hands that they can do something with. In my head, I feel like I know what they're going to do with him, which I'm quite excited for. But it also allows the narrative to continue, because it's now like, Kingston's a top bloke. Who's going to fight Kingston next? In my opinion, it's got to be Pac.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's got to be Pac's comeback now. Like, that's set up perfectly. You've got this top bloke that's only just lost out to Moxley, and you've suddenly bringing Pac back, and you've got this whole sort of beef between. You got the Lucha Bros coming in the next episode of Dynamite facing against each other. There's clearly some sort of disparity between the brothers, and so like there's a good storyline here.
One brother each.
Yeah, exactly. There's a really good storyline here that they can play, and you know, when Penta then turns on Kingston, which will happen for the brothers to reunite at some point because they're brothers. That's what always happens.
Yeah.
And then Death Triangle reunites. So that's in my head. It just makes such a great story. You suddenly got, you know, Kingston. This has been built up really well and stuff like that. So yeah. But anyway, that's further in the future. That might not happen. That's what I'd like to see happen. But I feel Kingston's done himself proud. Like, He's earned himself now as one of the big boys at AEW, and he cannot consider himself top 5, I wouldn't say, but you know, definitely top 10.
Yeah, well, there you go, Tony Khan. If you're listening, you want booking ideas for Pac, then Paper's written it out for you there. Moxley wins. Kenny won his match. Kenny pops out at the end, and we know where they're heading. Like, I think there might be one other title defense. I feel like Lance Archer's going to get another shot against Moxley because they keep going on about it and banging on about it. But that will, in my opinion, that's surely only going to be a pit stop until the collision course of Moxley versus Omega finally happens. You'd think Revolution would be the target for that. Yes, it's basically 4 months away, but I feel like they can do this, and I really have a sneaky suspicion that could be the end of Mox's title reign, and it might even be sickeningly close to being 1 year and not quite making it, like by a matter of days. Have a look. Revolution was the 29th last year of February. It'll be the 27th this year. So he'll be literally like 1 day away, or 2 days away from being a whole year as the champ. And I feel like Kenny's going to be that guy. It's going to come along and unseat him. And the problem, I think, that not the problem, but because Moxley's just been so good as a champion, like most of his defences, you kind of knew what way they were going to go. He feels like, because he's a level above everyone else, there's been no real major threat to it. Whereas I think if Kenny's in the right sort of foundational spot now to work towards that, and then we've got a pick-em fight happening at Revolution. And again, we talk about long-term storytelling. 1 year ago, Moxley took on Kenny Omega, but it was in a lights-out hardcore match. So Kenny lost that one. Now this is going to... I can't see them doing anything other than a straight wrestling match. And then Kenny gets the better of that because he's the better technician. And then who knows when the third match will happen. But I'm excited for this.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, there's some real good time to really build up Kenny to bring him back to that sort of real high level that we all know he's at and stuff like that. And I feel like 4 months is a good period of time for them to do that, for him to get out.
Feels a bit too long away, doesn't it? Considering you just won a tournament, you would expect, I don't know, like all the other, like the Battle Royale has been like within a few weeks or a month. Like, that's the only thing I'm thinking of, that they might pull the trigger early and do like a special Dynamite show. But I think you'd be doing the match a bit of a disservice putting it, well, maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you do the match on Dynamite, like a big show you build towards, and you swap the belt on Dynamite to prove that can happen as well. And maybe that's when you do it. I don't know. But it's an awful long time, 4 months, to have Kenny sort of just in the background working towards it. Like, in theory, he's already won his shot at it. So it's like, would you even bother wrestling if you had that in your back pocket?
Well, I feel like you got the opportunity to Kenny now to really sort of hammer home, because he's definitely the type of wrestler, more so than Mox, that can happily wrestle week in, week out and put on a great performance. And I feel like you should get Kenny facing some of the top, you know, guys in the area and stuff like that. Like, not just squash matches, but like, not like, you know, like the Sunny Kisses, the Janellas and stuff like that, but give him, you know, some of these, you know, top guys, the Lance Archers, the Brian Cages, and all like that, and the Brody Lees, and winning them, not super comfortably, but like winning them well. And it just slowly builds up. Kenny's always he's on this massive role and stuff like that. And then not only that, you've got Kenny was the number one wrestler in the world in 2018. Didn't Mox get given the number one wrestler for this year in the world?
Earlier on he was listed as number one. So
so we've got this whole, why not? You've got the whole playoff, you know. who really is the best wrestler of all time. They've both been ranked number one and stuff like that. And there's such a good build up to it. I feel like there's still some elite stuff happening in the background that he can definitely lean into and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We never mentioned the fact that, and actually this was poor from the commentators, they never mentioned the fact that Hangman appeared at the fucking tunnel when the Young Bucks won.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's there, mention it so your audience can see, because we hopefully the audience did see, but and I feel like after he came, like they were like, oh, was there someone in the doorway? But they never it's like you've missed it now, you've missed the opportunity to mention that, and like that was a good part of the story, because like there's that part of the story which they've got to play a bit with the whole Hangman's the loser of the whole of the elite's now going on to be the best and stuff like that. I'm excited for it. I don't feel like they need to do anything too crazy. I feel like you just need to keep Kenny winning well and winning against top blokes, and even just do a couple of like little exhibition things, like that's just fun. Like when Kenny bloody fought an 11-year-old or something once, Girl and stuff like that. Just do something like that just just bring that sort of Kenny back to the table and see how it goes. Maybe Kenny versus Marco Stunt again, where he just absolutely fucking destroys him. Who knows? Absolutely
bloodies him. Yeah, I like the idea of actually Lance Archer being beaten by Kenny. Like maybe Lance keeps waffling on about wanting a title shot or whatever it is, and Kenny's like, well, I've won the tournament, so you got to go through me. And maybe that's how they do it. Maybe that's how they build Kenny, is that he says that I want to have this match with Moxley. Maybe they mention Revolution as being where he wants to have the big match with all the lights and it being on pay-per-view. He says, until then, I'm going to defend the right to have this match. And he beats people like Lance Archer, like the Brian Cages, another like Eddie Kingston can come along and have a match and lose, and then you think, right, he's just beat the previous number one contender.
Because he hasn't really had the opportunity yet in singles. It doesn't feel like since he became that tag a year ago, hasn't had the opportunity to really prove himself in the singles aspect, apart from winning that tournament. And in that tournament, the only one he really faced that sort of deserved to be there, they played on, this was Hangman. So it feels like he now needs to sort of go away, so if he's going to win the title, that is. If he's not going to win the title, then maybe there's not too much of a point, but if he's going to win the title, then definitely build him up to beat all the guys. However, I would say don't beat everyone, because then it'll be hard
left
for him to face when he is champion. But
I've already told you, Hangman, Double or Nothing, comes back.
Yeah, there is definitely that real long term story to be told there.
And then Hangman's not the loser of the elite. He finally topples Kenny and wins it all after his 15th attempt.
Yeah, that would be good. I would enjoy that.
Well, that was Full Gear. What we doing? Thumbs up, thumbs down, 2 thumbs up, 1 thumb down. What are you going to give it?
I would give it a 1 thumbs up. It's out of the sort of 2 thumbs up is a perfect show. That every match I enjoyed. There was probably a couple of matches where I was a bit like the John Silver Cassidy I could have lived without. I felt like the Shida Nyla Rose match, these were good matches, I just didn't fully get into them. And there was just but there was some really, really good ones there. I would probably go 1.5 thumbs if I could. Obviously, you had the cinematic match as well, which is not for everyone. So, but yeah, for me, I would say a 1 thumbs up. It's worth the watch. It's 20 minutes too long though.
Yeah, I'll definitely give it 1 thumbs up. I think if you took out just the cinematic match, you'd have saved so much time. It wasn't necessary. Like that could have just not been there. And that feud, going back to it, I know they were feud, it was like a blood feud. It only got reignited 2 weeks ago randomly, and I was like, oh, we're doing that then. And it was, I know they probably wanted to finish off what they'd started, but I don't know. If you take that out, and the last third of the women's match, you've got, what's that, 6, 8, you've got 6 great matches there that all. Even this Cassidy and Silver match, I'll just leave that in because it's only 10 minutes and it's not doing much harm. But the one thing I would say is it felt, although it was pretty much the same length, maybe a couple of minutes longer than All Out, this felt like a much better show and it breezed by, to be honest. Other than the Elite Deletion match, which when I was aware this is a long match, but this was a step up from All Out, that's for sure.
No, for sure, it was definitely a step in the right direction. To be fair, and we're critical, but AEW have done a good bunch of shows this year. Considering that's their last show this year, I there's not one show I haven't really enjoyed. And we were critical of the last one, but in so much so that's probably better than every WWE pay-per-view that we've personally watched this year. So it's they do a good job for our audience, or what we like from our perspective. I would quite happily take I'd take 2021 to be in a similar vein of pay-per-views as this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just with a crowd.
Yeah. Well, who knows? We'll see about that. I think they've got about 1,000 or just under 1,000 like paid fans, like 900 odd, which it felt like it added a little bit this time, but it's still like you go back and just watch Revolution. It's just a different program. It's crazy, but I don't know. They've been doing a good job of keeping it watchable and entertaining without like the main crowd. So you have to kind of tip your cap to them. It's been a really difficult year for a lot of the companies and the wrestlers, and AEW have pivoted and been adaptable enough to kind of carry on. And just this is like their first full year, and you've had all this COVID shit going on. So it's a bit of a testament to survive that, really. I know they've got Tony Khan, and if they wanted to, they could put a load of money into it, but he's running it as a business. Like he's not just plundering money into it, seemingly, as we're told. It's all being paid for, and it's all making money over time. So they've done a really good job because that would have crippled most companies in that their first full year of television. And maybe TNT have helped because they've not dropped them, or they've kept.
Well, they renewed the contract, didn't they? They extended it.
Yeah, before all this happened, which was key. So that probably helped them out massively. So it's been a good year. It's a shame that it would have been a better year with the crowds, but that's not the year we've had in any walk of life. So we have to deal with it. But that's it. Full Gear 2020 in the books. Don't know when we'll be back. Don't know what it'll be to do with, but just keep subscribed. And one thing you definitely won't happen is you won't get your podcast feed clogged up by the DDT WrestleCast. That's for sure. So just stay subscribed, and you'll get a little bonus as and when they're ready. Nothing more for us to say apart from thanks for your time, and ta-da.
This was a DIMP Digital production.